Everyone's talking about ChatGPT at the moment, but let's be honest, nobody's really got a clue what it actually is and what you can truly do with it. It isn't magic, even though when it types it looks like it, and it isn't a search engine. And even though we talk with it, neither is it a chatbot. If you're a business owner or leader, then understanding ChatGPT and how it works gives you a dangerous advantage over everyone else who's still using it like a toy. By the end of this video, you're going to know 3 things. What ChatGPT really is, broken down in plain English, how it thinks and works, and how it actually builds answers rather than going to find them like Google, and how you can start using it at work today. Now, my big concern is that people are already getting fed up with using the words ChatGPT. It seems to explode it everywhere. So just try and think of it a bit like this. Imagine a magic wand. Imagine someone who's never been to Hogwarts or wizard school, who doesn't know any spells at all or how the wand works, picks it up, points it at someone, and it makes something levitate, or the wand lights up. And it's pretty cool. And it's pretty new, and no one else has seen this before, so everybody wants to give it a go, because it seems a little bit gimmicky. In the same way that you type a question into ChatGPT and you watch it type back, and it can find answers to questions in a way that we're not used to in Google. Now, take that same wand and put it in the hands of a wizard. Harry Potter's arrived. Somebody's gone to Hogwarts and they've studied for years and years and years to understand not only how the wand works, but how to use the wand, how to make your own spells, how to apply it to real world problems. That wizard, who knows how the wand works, can do things that seem like magic to mere muggles and people who don't know how to use the wand. And that's exactly what ChatGPT is like. For the 99.9% of people who have an account, they're using it to type emails poorly and answer a few quick questions and write things at a basic level. Now, most people are like the first one. They like the muggle, the person who's got the wand but doesn't know how to use it, doesn't know how to unlock the magic. They're just waving it around, having emails written for them in a really rubbish way, or answering basic simple questions in a slightly more easier way than using Google. But once you understand how it actually works, it stops seeming like a gimmick or a toy, and you actually use it for the stupidly powerful tool that it is. What is ChatGPT? Because we have all at least heard about it. Most of us have used it. But in actual fact, ChatGPT is something called a large language model, which is a bit like a new type of, it's not software, but it is a little bit like a software. So ChatGPT runs on something called an LLM, and that stands for large language model. In plain English, it's a computer program trained to understand and basically generate language through learning and a predictive nature. But I'll get onto that in a second. But almost think of it as the world's most powerful text predictor. So, you know, like the auto generation you have on text messages or WhatsApp when you type in and things come up. It works in a similar way to that, just significantly more intelligent. Instead of sort of your phone guessing the next word in a sentence, ChatGPT has read quite literally billions examples of conversations, reports, articles, forums, even sort of news articles, and it's trained on all the sort of public information we have available to us. And then it learns how people write, explain things, and essentially share knowledge. So when you give it a prompt, and just to introduce and clarify what that means, a prompt is actually the questions we're typing into the ChatGPT box. When you give it one of those, it doesn't actually look up the answer like Google. It builds one. And it builds one not based off searching, finding terms related to your search and retrieving files like Google in a search window, or like you would on your folders in Microsoft or whatever else you'd search for something. Instead, it builds it based on the patterns that it's learned. And I'm going to explain to you a way of thinking about that to understand how a large language model works, because the better you understand the tool, obviously, the more effectively you are at using it. So let's move on and explain the key difference between search and large language models, despite the fact I think people think they work the same, and they do look the same in terms of how they function. So on the left-hand side, we have a librarian, and I want you to think about that like Google, because that Google was the biggest sort of search engine prior to this, and people are starting to say, well, ChatGPT is now replacing Google, and while it may be, they're not the same. So think of a librarian. You walk into a library, and you want to find a book on, I'm from Wales, cooking Welsh cakes, okay? Welsh cakes, if you don't know what they are, they're beautiful. They're little, like, flat scone things that's cooked on a hot plate with raisins in. Sometimes you can have other things, but a true Welsh cake has raisins. Anyway, you walk in and you want to learn all about the Welsh cake. And you ask your librarian at the front desk, have you got any books on Welsh cooking, Wales, Welsh cakes? Search terms. The librarian goes, of course, love. They're over here. Obviously, every librarian is a slightly more middle-aged to elderly woman. You walk into the different areas whereby, however storage system they use, foldering system they use in that library, and she picks back all of the books relating to Wales, all the books relating to cooking, all the books relating to desserts and Welsh cakes, and brings those books back to you and retrieves them. And that's very much how like Google works. If you was to Google Welsh cakes, then it would bring back all the sort of websites, articles, and sources of information that's indexed on Google, which just simply means stored in a way that Google can find it and give them back to you for you to read. Whereas ChatGPT works a bit more like a wonderful map on the right-hand side of your screen, because it has all the information. It has billions and billions and billions of information. And instead, ChatGPT draws a new route for you every time it asks a question. So based on the question you ask, it accesses its knowledge that it understands in terms of what words should you go after each other. And the more words you give it in terms of a prompt, and we're going to use a prompt from this point onwards, that prompt, that instruction, gives it context for it to go into its bank of everything that it knows, all the words that it has stored and learned, to understand, well, what words go after that to answer that prompt. Let's move on and I'll talk you through step by step how it actually works from the moment you enter your prompt. Now, first off, the reason why I say prompt is because that's what it's called. And we need to start thinking about that when using ChatGPT. How do you prompt it? Think of it as an instruction to do the thing that you want it to do rather than us asking a question. Because when you understand how it works in regards to that, it is not a search index. It's not something you can ask a question. You can ask a question of it, but it's not something to ask a question of. Instead, it's something that will build you an answer. Then you start to realize to build something, we need an instruction. And the better the instruction, the better the outcome of the build. If you give someone a very vague instruction, you have a vague build. Think of an architect. Rubbish plans for a house, poor house, not what you wanted. Good plans for a house, exactly what you wanted. And for that, you need to give us something called context. But let's just go step by step through everything first, and then I'll talk you through in a little bit more detail. So up in the top left corner here, you're asking for something. So you type your prompt, and everything you write becomes this brief. It becomes this instruction. And then step two is an actual fact. What it does, it takes your words, the things you've written, and it breaks your words into Lego bricks. It's called tokens. But what it actually does is, I'm going to use the visual sort of thought of it being a Lego brick, but the term is tokenization or token, because it sees everything in these tokens. So it chops sentences into tiny bits called tokens. And they basically operate a little bit like Lego bricks. And each brick may be a word. It's very unlikely normally the one brick is, or one token is a full word, only if it's a very short word. So if you had, say, 1,000 words in a paragraph, then it would account for about anywhere from sort of 65 to 75% of the tokens. That's the way of looking at it. So just knock 20% off, and you roughly know how many tokens is there based off the total word count. Each brick can only be part of a certain configuration, or it's learned that it goes together in a certain way. Much like when you first have a Lego kit, you don't know how it all goes together. You look at the instructions, you see pictures, and you start to think, oh, that's where that brick goes, that brick goes, that brick goes. And you can start to build these things over time. And then once you get more familiar with them and you start thinking about what you want to build yourself because you know how it all goes together, then you can start building your own things because you know how everything fits. So moving on. The training. This is the bit whereby you've heard, an update to a language model, an update to ChatGPT, and it's been retrained on data. So basically, how it works is it has this one context of body of information. So it reads billions of examples and learned which sort of words and tones fit together to construct sentences. But also remember, they've analysed these sentences within sort of the context that they were meant to be written by us originally. So what I mean by that is articles, spoken word, forums, the things that we've said and how we've said them. So it doesn't store text. It actually learns the relationships between tokens in like this neural network that it thinks. So it understands what words go together, how they fit together, and what's most likely to fit together based on its learning. And then how does it work? So you've given your prompt. We understand that it's broken it down into these Lego bricks to understand how these bricks fit together. So it's got a good idea. And now it's gone off into its brain, is learning to understand, okay, how do I answer this? So it's taken your plan, it's gone into its brain, it's gone, right, this plan is these details here. I understand how they work together. This is how it all works in my world. And now it starts doing this. It predicts the next word, only the next word first, but it does this super quickly. So what happens is it plays like a giant guessing game, essentially, but it is based on high-end probability, which is why we have an astronaut using a calculator, because clearly, if you're an astronaut using a calculator, then you must be using it well. What's the most likely next word here? That is exactly what it's thinking to itself. So it'll take your prompt, starts a word, the most likely word that will answer the prompt, then it'll put another one, then it'll put another one. And it calculates probabilities and builds the answer one word at a time. But what's most important is as each word is added, it checks itself as it writes to re-establish the context. So it'll go one word, then the second word, then the third word. And each time it's rechecking based off the prompt you give it, its understanding of the world, its knowledge base, and what it's writing out. So each new word changes the context slightly, so it keeps rereading to stay on topic and most importantly in tone. And in terms of topic and tone and output, depending on how good your instruction, prompt, question is, the better that will be. And then step 6, how does it stop? Well, there's a few ways that it stops. It has a context window limit of memory. So basically that's the amount of tokens that it can output. So when that fills, it'll stop. Or what happens is because it works on a science of probability, when it thinks that it is unlikely for more tokens to be relevant or relative here in this answer, I stop. That's simple. Or simply, it stops because you've told it in your instruction what the end outcome is, and it matches that I have fulfilled this end outcome based on the relationships between the tokens, and now I'm done. I have built the Lego house to the specs that the person has provided me. But if you don't provide it with good specs, it might not have built the house you wanted, and it might have carried on building it or built it too small. That's the way of looking at it. So what's super important to just understand broadly across this sort of 6-stage way of how, when you type a prompt in, how it comes back with that answer you see being typed out all nice and jazzy in ChatGPT. So we've got to remember, you're almost like the director of a play, and ChatGPT is the actor, and your prompt is the script, and the clear direction equals the better output. And that's why prompting is a huge skill, and it's an undervalued skill because people still think in terms of questions rather than prompts. So what I'm trying to illustrate here is if you can think about how you can craft an answer, that is a better thing. And in the next couple of days, I'm actually going to be talking through how you can get more out of ChatGPT through the way you prompt, especially when it comes to getting motive in work or in your business. But we've talked a lot about ChatGPT here, but remember, ChatGPT is a large language model. And what I want to talk about here is in the fact that there's multiple large language models. In fact, there's hundreds, if not thousands. But here's my top 3 for you. ChatGPT on the left. Let me explain these top 3 so you can understand the key differences. Because think of large language models as instruments. Okay? This is a strange illustrative example. They all play a melody. They all have the same outcome in terms of they produce some music. They produce some sound. Each language model will answer a question for you. But the way in which they do it and the sound they have is different. And they are better at different things. If we're in classical music, then we want a nice violin, or maybe we want a couple of brass instruments. But if we're in an AC/DC concert, then we want some electronic guitars and a drum kit. And depending on what our end goal is and what our purpose and use for of the large language model is, depends on which one we should use, despite the fact that everyone uses ChatGPT. And I'll introduce ChatGPT for you. So ChatGPT is the all-rounder. It's good at reasoning, which means it's good at understanding humans. So it's very good at working out what you actually want without you being super good at telling it. The better you are tell it, the better. So it's good at reasoning, writing, and creative problem solving. So basically, it's great for things like business communication, summaries, analysis, and it's a general all-rounder. The reason why he's exploded and been so popular, not only because it had a very good rise to fame a couple of years ago and exploded quite quickly, but also it's a Swiss Army knife of large language models that anyone can access and use. This one in the center here is Claude. Now, I personally love Claude, and I would suggest if you're not the best at prompting and you don't even know what the word prompt means, and you're trying to write email responses or any written text in a work context, summarizing a report, writing an email response, you might want to start using Claude because Claude is amazing with language. It's better than ChatGPT solely at processing written word. It's awesome at writing natural, humanized outputs that haven't got those classic signs that ChatGPT have been written by ChatGPT. Think about M dashes or M hyphens, stuff like that. So it can handle huge files and keeps tone consistent over long text. So what it doesn't do is deviate over time. So when I said to you about the way that it looks at what it's writing, checks your original prompt and makes sure it's all the same, it does that very effectively. So it's very good at consistently writing reports or emails because it maintains the same sort of tone of voice. It's great for writing contracts or policy documents or anything in a brand voice for a company. And this one on the right-hand side, this is where it's different. So Swiss Army knife, a little bit of everything, not awesome at one thing, but very good if you can prompt it correctly. This fantastic at text, writing, report, speech, language, and tonality. On the right-hand side is Gemini, Google Gemini. And this one, you may not have heard of, but I can guarantee you've used. In actual fact, you may have used Gemini a lot more than these two, even if you use this every day, because Google Gemini is actually the one that's linked to Google Live Searches. Now, both of these, on a paid tier, you can use a live search, but Gemini links to live search data, is actually Google's AI baby to make and superpower its search. So what it does, it handles real-time information incredibly well because it works almost like a Google search with this AI on top of it. So think about the tokenized memory we spoke about. Google has got that, but within it indexed this live Google search, is constantly updating, so it can pull you back things. Think when you search for, where is the best hairstylist because I'm in need of a haircut in my area, and you get those summary recommendations at the top of Google. That's Gemini working. But what's important is they all understand language. That's why they're called large language models, and super important to understand. That's very, very good for business and work life because email, text communication, reports, data is the bread and butter of a large language model, hence it being language. Each one of these is fantastic in its own right, and the better you learn how to use large language models, prompt them, instruct them, you can get 10, 20 times the output of what you're doing right now. And the differences between the three become less important when we're talking about sort of generalized tasks if you know how to use them. So now we've talked through what ChatGPT is. In actual fact, it's a large language model and how a large language model works, and the top three ones that you need to know about and should be aware of, and as alternatives to ChatGPT. I want to give you three amazing use cases for using. We're going to focus on ChatGPT in your business, in your job, and start benefiting quite literally today, 5 minutes after this. Now, this is really simple. I want you to think about a large email trail, just one large email, a report, a PowerPoint presentation, or a big PDF. I just know those are the five sort of main sources of data that we are working through all the time as professionals. And it takes time to read through and find out what you want. So what you can do, mega simple, you can drop and drag these reports, these documents into ChatGPT and quite simply query it and ask what you need to know. Tell them who you are, that provides you with the context. Tell them the outcome that you want. I want to make sure that I know everything pertaining to my role. My role is X, Y, and Z. Could you list it for me in bullet point form, please? Perfect. It'll bring that back for you. You can ask a key data things. If you know these things in the report you want to know, but you can ask it that. It's super effective at summarizing things very quickly for you to have an understanding of them without having to read through the full thing. What it can also do is if you do have a long email trail or a long communication, you can ask it to break it down into bullet point format. And because it understands the context of the world, you can tell it how you want it to give it to you. So if you want to explain a complex point in language that a 5-year-old understands in very limited amount of text that can be read in 60 seconds, you can tell it to do that, and it'll understand what that means because it knows that what the relationships between those words mean in terms of the building blocks, how that would look based off what you've given it. The same then, you can expand it out and ask it to go into deep academic level and explanations. So let's go for point 2, and that's processing information and answering questions. So I love this one, and this is actually something that I think most businesses should do. So whether we've got data, report, an Excel spreadsheet, or most importantly, like a process or any kind of explanation like instructions, we can build what's called a custom GPT. So think of what you use in ChatGPT in a normal window. It's like that. But what you've done instead is you've had a little tool on the side. You'll be able to go in and give it specific memory and give it a specific instruction of how to use that memory and speak to the person using the ChatGPT. So it's like your own mini little ChatGPT. So what you can do, you could give it all of your policy and process and P's and P's documents of a company, And instead of people having to ask a question then, where do I find this document? Or how do I do this process? All of that is stored in the GPT. You can ask the questions and it can answer for you. So it's your own little process assistant. And that is easy to do. Very easy to do. So easy, in fact, I'm going to show you how to do it over the next couple of videos. So buckle up if you want to benefit from that. Now, third one. This is one of my favorites, okay? It is data and reports analysis. I know a lot of professionals, a lot of business people, a lot of business owners spend an awful lot of time in reporting, metrics reporting. And we have systems whereby we can download data from too. So all this normally lives in Excel. And if you're someone who spends time putting a filter across the top, VLOOKUP and pivoting to show and display data in certain ways, or to cleanse it and quickly find relationships. You might be running an Excel report where you have to see the relationship between two dates. You might be a manufacturer and you want to look at all of your buyers' data promised it. So the dates that your buying team, the team that buys stuff for a business, for everyone else who doesn't work in manufacturing, if in this hypothetical example, we'll go for the jelly bean factory example, and you're buying all your sugar and all your raw ingredients, your packaging for your jelly beans, and you've got a big customer, Mr. Morrison's, who's selling a huge amount of jelly beans for Christmas, and they need them in for the shelves on the 1st of December. More likely the blinking 1st of October these days, and how early we start celebrating Christmas, which I'm not complaining about. But you're 3 weeks away, your ingredients haven't come yet, and you look in and you think, oh my God, that is going to be too late. And you have to look at the difference between the two dates. Well, you can ask ChatGPT to do that for you. Can you look at column X and Y? Can you look at due date of X versus delivery date of Y? Any sort of data you have, you can ask it to do that analysis instantaneously. And what's really cool is you can do these two amazing things. And I'm going to show you how to do all this in these videos. So it's definitely a good reason to subscribe to the channel and become a little Jedi with ChatGPT, large language models, and most importantly, AI systems. But you can actually ask it to go, okay, use the information and data I'm looking at and want to extrapolate. And can you write me some summative points? Can you write me a report on this data, please? And obviously, you want to give it the context then. You know, I am this person, I work this job. This is the kind of report and who we're reading it for. We want it to speak in these kind of languages. Here's some examples of reports I've written in the past. Go. Beautiful prompt. Relevant instruction. Or you can find that specific bit of data that you want. It could just be the amount of sales this quarter versus year to date. And we could build a pie chart or a graph and ask it to do it for us and give that all information. And because ChatGPT has got very good at generating images now, it does that for you too. All these examples use ChatGPT as is, but as an individual tool. But the real power comes when you teach it your business. Remember when I explained to you about the context, about this learning? Well, any AI you use, any large language model you use, has the learnings that the company who owns that large language model has decided to go out and get, and that creates its intelligence. So it's already got all this knowledge and awareness, general knowledge and awareness. Think of it that way, it's general. If you was to upload all your standard operating procedures, your processes, your data, your templates, your brand voice, your tones, your communication, your Zoom, your emails, your processes, your everything. Imagine it having access to all that data and how much more powerful it could be just simply asking and answering questions, let alone when you can start to prompt it to do things for you. Because then you suddenly have a private assistant that thinks and communicates like your team. And what we now can do as part of a system is give it tools to also do things for you, as if it's one of your team. And that's what we'll build later in this sort of series. Is I'm going to show you custom GPTs. I'm going to show you how to prompt. I'm going to show you how to build things that you can't just answer questions to, but actually work for you inside your operations. And what this creates, and this is just a bit of a metaphor, but you've got your data. And you've got all this context. And together, when you build them, you build almost like a genie in a lamp that pops out and can answer any question for you, access your data instantaneously, and know you inside out better than you know yourself. And that's what's super important. It's almost like having a infinitely scalable, that never tires genius of 150 plus IQ, maybe even more, that knows everything generally. And once you give it your data, it becomes the pro on you and your business. And that is the best way of summarizing it. And when we add tools to this and let it work for you, it takes it to a whole new level again. And that's what this channel is all about. The purpose of this video was to help you in simple terms as a business leader, owner, understand exactly what ChatGPT is, what large language models are, the different types there are, how they work, how they benefit, and how they function in order for you to get a little bit more value out of them. And in the next couple of videos, we're going to go into these things in a little bit more deeper detail, so you're equipped with the knowledge and understanding that changes these gimmicky little toys into tools that actually make impact. So there's one thing I mentioned today, and that was prompting. That's the context you give these language models. And in my next video, I'm going to talk through the art of prompting. And I will talk through everything that you need to know to be incredibly dangerous at using large language models and getting the outcomes that you really want. As always, thank you very much for watching. And if you've got any questions on anything I've talked about, or anything else that I've talked about in any of my videos, the comments are below, and I will reply to you and provide you as much help as I can. Have an awesome day.